Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We are right on time.
All right.
All right.
Anders, I have your question from a couple weeks ago, so Jim, I'm gonna share that with you in Slack
Okay.
so you can see it. Or should I post it in the chat? I
You
guess I
can
could
just put it in
post
the
it.
bottom of the canvas there.
Oh yeah, I'm in the canvas. Hey.
Hey, everybody. I see we're 1 minute after. Should we get started, Elaine?
Yeah, let's do
Are we
it.
going to record this or
It
have we
is.
been
It
recording?
should be recording.
Should
Yeah,
be
I see it
recording.
recording.
Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Jim Kalbach. I'm the co-founder and principal of the Jobs to Be Done Toolkit, also the author of the Jobs to Be Done Playbook. And I'm going to be your host along with Elaine today. And we're going to talk about a couple of things. We wanted to give you some toolkit updates. We have a quick question for you to engage in conversation. I just have an example. If we're calling these field reports, a quick example, but we want to spend a good half of the session here. We have about a half an hour. We want to take your questions and have a conversation. We'll probably unmute some people and have a little bit of a dialogue. So that's all we have planned today. We got a kind of a quick session of a half an hour. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Elaine.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Elaine Mathias. I am the co-founder of the JTBD Toolkit along with Jim Kalbach. And we have sort of conceptualized this as your go-to resource for all things jobs to be done. So we have launched an online course. We're hosting these monthly free Q&As. We're hosting monthly webinars. And then of course, Jim is the author of the Jobs to be Done Playbook. So if you haven't picked up your copy, head over to Rosenfeld Media and do that. We have a couple of new things in the pipeline. So our next workshop is scheduled for December 22nd, and we're going to cover research techniques and jobs to be done. Mark was an attendee of our recent workshop. I hope he had a really wonderful time, but that would be somebody if you want a testimonial. So we're really excited about this topic, and it'll be 3 hours, super interactive, lots of activities and opportunities to practice the concepts. And then lastly, we have a new module in the pipeline that will be coming out in December. It's a series of probably 4 or 5 videos that cover how to scope your jobs to be done strategy. And for those of you that already have purchased the toolkit, this will be included, the new module. So you'll already have that. If you haven't purchased the toolkit, then when it comes out, take a look at what we've got, and hopefully it will appeal to you. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. Thanks for that overview. That's jtbdtoolkit.com if you want to go over there and check out what we got going on there. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Let me know where you're calling in from. Actually, you know what? I have a quick question before you do that. I have a question. So if everybody wants to go to the chat, I wrote the Jobs to Be Done playbook focused around plays. What I wanted to do was kind of break Jobs to Be Done, which is a big field, a big topic. I wanted to break it down into small, tangible plays or techniques that you could use. And essentially, the playbook is a collection of plays already out there. And what I wanted to ask the group here is, what plays have you tried in Jobs to Be Done? What have you tried? And what was your experience with them? So it could be around switch interviews or jobs interviews, doing the research part of it, or creating a job map, or doing roadmaps that are jobs infused. Job stories, a very popular technique. Jobs-based personas, consumption maps. You can also do competitor reviews, onboarding design, churn prevention. I have a little bit in there. And then there's some corporate strategy plays that I also have there. So I'm just wondering, from the folks on the line, can you just put in the chat, what plays have you tried and have they worked? Was it job stories or job maps? Those are two very, very popular ones, but I'm curious what other folks have tried as well too. And I see Jose said job maps from Mark as well too. For my taste, I meant to say a job map is one of the first best things that you can do with Jobs to Be Done. Is do the research and get up to a job map, because you can do so much from there. It's really incredible. And that's what we talk about, of course, in the workshops, Elaine, and also in the course as well, too. And I see Wolfram put job stories as well, too. Job-based personas somehow. I think I'm going to have to unmute Wolfram. I gotta dig into that one, Wolfram. Jobs-based personas somehow.
Yeah, so hi. Jim, hi everyone.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah.
Our personas are we didn't exactly apply it, but our personas are job based. That's why we focus a lot
Gotcha.
around the main job and stuff. So that's why
Gotcha.
I wrote somehow.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I got you. Yeah. Somehow. Right. Yeah. Which is a good point too. Of course, Alan Cooper introduced personas to the design community, almost 30 years ago through his goal-directed design. And one of the steps in goal-directed design is to create a persona. And the way that he creates personas is goal-based. It's not around demographics or around your marketing or sales segments. It's what are the goals that the people that you're trying to serve have, and make a persona to represent those goals. Of course, if you look at pretty much any persona out there in the wild, they're probably not goal-based, right? But if you create goal-based personas, you're essentially doing job-based personas somehow, right? And actually in the playbook, I pretty much cite Alan Cooper's method as a way to create goal-based personas. And that's really the key. So I appreciate your little qualification there, Wolfram, somehow. Yeah. Job stories. So yeah, a lot of job stories, a lot of job mapping too. And of course, those are things that we highlight on, in the course, but also in the workshops as well too. We highlight job maps and job stories quite a bit because they're very, very popular and very practical and handy.
Jim, it sounds like both Wolfram and Anders have experience kind of working on job stories or job maps, but it's part of like additional frameworks or part of another initiative.
Yep.
I'm not familiar with Lego workshops. What are those, Anders? Oh, he might have dropped off. Do you know what Lego workshops are?
It might be they have this serious play approach. It's like a method. It's kind of like a design thinking or like an innovation approach. That that's probably what it refers to. That Lego has put out. I think they call it serious play.
Yeah.
Right?
Anders,
Is that you, Anders?
I just gave him permission.
Yes, it is.
Hey.
They are basically like Lego serious play,
Yep.
but I work in the we build water meters. So we built sets of Lego that resembled the things that the utilities use in their daily lives, and we had to build out their water pipe network and their radio survey network and stuff like that,
Right.
for them to explain what was going on and how they did what.
Right.
So it was basically Lego serious play, but with pre-built stuff from our side.
Yep. Great. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for that, Anders. And thanks for your remarks there. I see there's a question. I'll take that one at the end, Joshua. So yeah, thanks for doing that. So ask your questions in Zoom right now. I'm just going to switch briefly. I have one example that I wanted to show everybody, and maybe that'll spur some questions as well too. So I'm going to move on, Elaine, and
Great.
Am I sharing my screen? I'm sharing my screen, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. I tweeted this out too. If you follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at Jim Kalbach. You can follow me on Twitter. I tweeted this example out last week, and it got a lot of likes and retweets and things. So I just wanted to bring it here into the group and look at it maybe in a little bit more detail. I got contacted by a designer named Evan Shore. He's actually very close to me in Hoboken, New Jersey. I'm in Jersey City, New Jersey, but he works for Walmart, and he's been playing with, thinking about jobs to be done for a while now, trying to bring it into his design work. And that's what he did on the design of this page here. He was involved in it somehow. I think he might have been the design lead on this project. And this is, if you go to walmart.com/sleep, so it's walmart.com/sleep, you'll get to that page there too. I'm showing the page here. But what they wanted to do was they wanted to identify the top unmet needs, or the top needs that people have when they sleep. So if you think about sleep as a main job, you see on the left-hand side, and they use that directly as the navigation. So you'll see here they had these 4 categories: fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, stop snoring and grinding teeth, and then wake up energized. And within that, then they have a couple of other points, and this all came from their jobs to be done research. So I spoke with Evan about this. He's the one who pointed this example out to me. and confirm that this was the conception of this navigation was directly influenced and guided by Jobs to be Done research. He also said that conversion and all of the KPIs that they had around this particular project, Walmart.com/sleep, that everything went up, so that the introduction of this navigation scheme actually increased all of their KPIs that they were trying to go for, like conversion and things like that. So successful story in a couple of ways. So I just wanted to point that out as a great example of using Jobs to be Done for interface design. Of course, I have a play or two, I think, in the book around how you can conceive of information architecture and navigation schemes based on Jobs to be Done. And this is a great, very current real world example. Just put that URL in here. It's walmart.com/sleep. That'll resolve to a different URL, but I thought that was pretty nifty and inspiring as well too. I hope you guys are inspired by that. So we can have a little conversation about that, but I'm going to move right into the Q&A then. And if somebody wants to talk about the Walmart example, we can go back over to it. But Elaine, I wanted to jump right into some of the questions.
Yes, and I have been sort of populating the questions in the Q&A. So
Right.
If you want to start with Anders and then
Yep.
move on to Josh, and then I'll continue adding things from the chat.
Okay. I always struggle with the definition of the job. It always seems to be able to define the job in a smaller or larger chunk. What is the correct framing of the job to maximize the likelihood that the good chunk size so it can be split into smaller tasks, right? What is your experience? Do you go large or small? And what are the thoughts around defining a good sized job? Unfortunately, the real underlying answer to that question is it depends. And it depends on the answer to the question, where do you want to innovate? And that's, by the way, that's the topic of the new module that we have coming out, where I talk a lot about the first video, which is the longest video, kind of deals with this question about size, level of altitude, I call it, size. When do you break it into two jobs or multiple jobs, related jobs? I see I have a question about related jobs coming up here as well, too. So that's all part of it. There's no right or wrong answer, but you are going to have a hierarchy. I like to think about things in a hierarchy. That you might have a high-level aspiration, which actually isn't a job. It's kind of sits above that. And then you might have a hierarchy of 2, 3, even 4 different levels within your job space that you need to navigate and be able to answer the question, where do you want to innovate? If you're the manufacturer of power tools, you make saws and drills and sanders and things like that, you could innovate around the job, of home improvement, right? We'd have to think about a nice way to formulate that. But if your job performer is an amateur home improvement handy person, right? That's your job performer. A home improvement, or let's say, how would we phrase that? Improve your home or something like that would be the main job. That same company, and that's where you want to innovate. You want to innovate by supporting people as they improve their homes, right? That same company can say, we want to innovate around drilling a hole in the wall. That's where you could scope your frame of innovation and say, oh, our main job is actually drilling a hole in the wall. And guess what? Drilling a hole in the wall has a beginning, middle, and end. And I can make a job map, do prioritization, write job stories around drilling a hole in the wall. Right? So there's no right or wrong answer, right? So I'm in the business of, making power tools or home improvement. I can innovate at the company level across my whole company. We want to move into the home improvement area, or I could say we want to help people drill a hole in the wall. And but any of those levels of innovation are okay. So you have to determine what fills the gap in your organization right now. Where's the gap in knowledge, and where's your kind of corporate attention going to be, and then frame the job around that. What I like to do is actually go one step higher, right? So you always want to stretch yourself. If your field of vision is already here, can you make it just one step a little bigger, right? So just go a little bit bigger and then anchor that as your main job. You won't be able to do that because it's bigger than what you currently get done, but that's where you stretch and push the boundaries. But it's really just listening to your stakeholders, listening to your market, and trying to get the right level of granularity. So there is no such thing as too large or too small. Well, there is such a thing as too large when you start getting into aspirations, right? I want to be a proud homeowner. That's not a really good job. right? To be a proud homeowner is not a good starting point. At least you want to come down to something that's more functional, that has a beginning, middle, and an end. So sorry, Anders. I hope that's okay. Can we unmute Anders and see if there's any follow up there on that?
Yes.
You got any? Sorry, Anders. Was that okay, or did that help at all?
That's a perfect answer.
Okay, yeah, perfect answer. Wow.
Yeah. Yes, please. Yes, thank you. So,
okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely answers my question.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Well, again, I got more on that. I hope to write a blog post. We got the new module coming out. I also have a mural canvas where all that scoping is kind of in there. But it's also related to circumstances as well too. So remember, in my model of jobs to be done, there are I have 5 elements, right? And one of them are circumstances. So I could say, home improvement, and I could qualify home improvement by saying something like in small apartment buildings, right? Or in large houses or something like that, right? So you can also qualify the job not necessarily by smaller or larger, but also by limiting it with a circumstance as well too. You can limit or broaden your field of vision. So those are all things that kind of they're dependent on each other, right? The level of altitude and whether you add a circumstance to your main job all kind of depend on how you're going to answer the question, where do you want to innovate? Yeah, thanks for that. So I see we got 2 more questions from Josh here. I'm going to go on to those, Elaine, okay?
Yeah, do you want to have Josh ask them?
Sure. Hey, Josh.
He should be allowed.
Hey, Jim.
Hi there.
Yeah, so I just finished Kale Coffee, Coffee and Kale Compete book, and fascinating read. One of the final chapters, he does talk about the conflicting messaging between jobs to be done as a typography versus it being as a theory.
Yeah.
And he says they're incompatible, but I found through reading your book, I didn't see much conflict. But his arguments did make sense at the same time. I'm just wondering if you could talk through your thinking about that.
Yeah, sure. And there are two things that I always say to that. And one of them is related to what I was just talking about with level of altitude, right? That I think, kind of the progress school of thought or the switch school of thought, Bob Mesta, Alan Clement, I think their starting point is at a kind of a higher level of altitude. They might be up here or, maybe even just right in between. And then there are, other schools of thought, which I think, for my taste, kind of Tony Ulwick really developed, and other folks have grabbed onto that, including myself. Take a little bit more of a functional approach and say that, a job should actually start here. Now, keep in mind, there might be a level in between, or even 2 in between, that there might be a level here before you get to your big job. For instance, if I say drill a hole in the wall, it's not even a big job. It's actually more the main job, right? And then this is a job step. So I can make anything a main job, and it'll have job steps. But there might be another level or 2 in between here. So the difference that I see between the different schools of thoughts is, first of all, one of level. Yes, the aspirations are important to know that, but what I believe is that innovation should start by defining that functional job first. At whatever level you define it at, but that's where you define it. And then the second point is, as I just hinted, it's more or less of a process. It's where's your starting point? So it's not just level, but it's where should the best starting point be? And I believe that the best starting point is to boil everything down to, okay, if I want to drill a hole in the wall, well, let's just understand drilling a hole in the wall. And then in a second step, you can layer on emotions and aspirations and other aspects. And then you can start looking at your solution and comparing it, right? But once you have that core spine of that job map and the job stories and the things that you guys were putting in the chat for the first question that I asked, that you can layer on those other things easier. If you do it the other way around and you start with the aspiration, so I want to be a proud homeowner, right? So you manufacture drills and you're going to start with, I want to be a proud homeowner. The problem with that is there's so many ways that you can solve that problem that are even completely unrelated to what you do. So I believe the starting point for innovation is, what can you affect? And I've done many, I'm guilty of this too. I've done many brainstorming and design thinking sessions, design sprints, where we're trying to solve an aspiration, and then you end up with a wall full of sticky notes and a room full of designers who don't have a budget or resources or teams. And you say, well, this is great thinking that we did, but we can't act on that. So what I want to do is I want to bring innovation down and start there. What can we actually affect? And then go to the aspirational level in a second step. I hope that made sense, Josh.
It makes sense. In his example, he does talk about IKEA.
Yeah.
And, jobs as progress, they're able to remove steps, which you can't do when you have jobs as tasks. I'm wondering if you could address that as well.
Well, why can't you remove steps? That could be one of your analysis. If you had a job map, so let's say I had a job map for, taking I don't want to say the word Uber. I'm sure I'm trying to avoid the word Uber, but taking a cab. What's a generic word for that type of transportation? Taking a for-hire mode of transportation, an individual for-hire mode of transportation. If I want to do that, right, you might look at the current experience that you have with a cab, and what Uber did is they actually changed the order of things, right? You pay before you get in the car, right, and that kind of thing. So I don't see why you can't do that level of analysis when you're looking at a functional level. And by the way, I try to avoid the word task because there's this other thing out there called task analysis, which is completely different. So I like to talk about functional objectives or steps. But once I have those steps, why can't I try to reorder those steps?
Good point. Excellent.
Yeah. So I disagree with the premise that, if you start with the functional, you absolutely can reorder the steps.
Cool.
Yeah. But here's the thing, those two can actually work in conjunction with each other. And again, it's a process. So I would say, let's make a job map and then look at the aspiration. So one of the examples that I use in a lot of my workshops is attending a conference or attending a professional event or something like that. And then you look at that and you say, okay, what's the job performer trying to do? And it's like, well, they're trying to enhance their career or build a network. That's the aspiration, right? And you can then look at the job map and ask yourself, at what point in time does completing that functional job best affect that aspiration? Or it's said the other way, at what point is that aspiration most relevant, right? And if it's to build my career or advance my network, well, it's networking with people at conferences, right? So you can actually combine the two as well, too. I don't see them mutually exclusive at all.
Interesting.
I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I'm thinking about some clients I work with where I could apply that.
Cool. And then since you're on the hook here, you had another question about experimentation, Josh.
Yeah, I'm working with a client with very limited product analytics, and they're doing 2021 road mapping, and we're going to need to do hypothesis testing just to know if we can affect change on certain key KPIs. And I'm just wondering what the role of their job map is with the hypothesis models out there.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the first best things that I like to do with a job map is find what I call hotspots or weak spots, right? So you do the job map based on research. It's independent of technology. That's the thing that gets done, in the future. That's the way they did it 50 years ago, all those test questions. But then you can compare your own business or your own product or your own offering to that job map and ask yourself, where are we weaker or stronger? And you can find hotspots. Right? And those hotspots can then become themes inside of your roadmap as well, too. This is what we just talked about, Elaine, in the last workshop. Last week, we did a workshop on jobs to be done for product management. And we were talking about finding the opportunity in the job map, which then becomes the theme that you work around in your roadmap. Mm-hmm. So if you find those hotspots, you can say, well, guess what? For Q3, what we're going to do is we're going to try to make those spots in the job map better. Right? And then you can break that down even further into KPIs and things like that. But it's that overarching opportunity identification based on the job map that then flows into, well, if we need a roadmap, we better fix those two spots. That becomes the theme for your roadmap.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I got Mark. Mark's got two questions too. So, hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
All right. Yeah. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, cool.
Mark, I tried to pull up the page numbers that you gave don't exactly align with the book that I have, but is this the job map that one of them that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's one of them. And then on page, let me have a quick look.
It's like, open your hymnal to hymn number 34.
Yes.
So
Well, everybody has their book open.
the first one was page 26.
26.
Well, I've got it on a what's it called? Kindle, so it might be slightly different. So yeah, page 46 is the attend conference job map.
Yes.
Which is fine.
Yep.
And then on the other page, there is another job map, which is got grey boxes. I don't know if that jogs your memory.
Oh, this one.
That the parking one? Yeah, that's actually from Mike Boyson. He created that. Yeah, go ahead.
Here, I'll hold
So,
it up.
they kind of look different.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, how do we read that one? Because I think the second one that was just shown, you read from from left to right, and then
it's snaked around,
line by line, like a
Correct.
book. But
Correct.
the first one, I don't believe you read it in the same way.
No, that's correct. The orientation is a little bit different. I mean, I wrote this book called Mapping Experiences, right? So I like to think about this kind of swim lane, left to right mode of thinking about the job maps.
Yeah.
I have an example here. Just give me 1 second. I actually just gave a talk this morning where I had two different styles of job maps. And Mike's style over there, which kind of snakes around. I have a theory for why they do that. See, this was my talk today, and I use this example. This is another example. Are you guys seeing my screen still?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, this is for retrieving scientific information. That's a field I used to work in. And you can see over here on the left, they have the phases or the stages, right? So the before is you formulate a question to ask if you're a scientist retrieving information, and you define the information need, formulate the question to ask. And then you go to the next stage and you have ask a question, and then you do these steps. And then in the third phase, it's receive answers. And notice there's a loop here too. So you determine what next to do. You might go back and pick a new source. You might modify the query, or you might end. Job maps typically aren't flow diagrams, so it's okay if you have a key flow like that. Like when you're doing research, there is this iterative thing. It's okay to show you go back and forth, but you don't want to have every condition and every possible flow, because then it turns into a flow diagram. You typically want it to be fairly simple and one or two of those loops. Notice that this also has a kind of like a reading a book, like Mike's diagram. What I like to do is more of this style here. This is facilitating a workshop where you kind of have, you see here, I usually put the word before, during, and after on the page. That's how I start with a job map. I just put before, during, and after on there, and then as you do your research or whatever, the data that you're using to create the job map, you can just start slotting things in, and then you cluster those and you come up with the stages. But you'll see here, instead of having those 3 big stages, I actually have 9 smaller stages, but then about the same number of steps that I've kind of sorted into those stages. And I kind of like going across here. I think it's the same thing. It's basically just a chronology that you need to kind of represent. This chronology focuses a little bit more on the stages, whereas this one focuses a little bit more on the sequence of steps. Now, my theory is why they do this way is because it fits on a PowerPoint slide better. That if you go from left to right like a customer journey map, you're going to end up with longer pieces of paper and longer things that don't fit into PowerPoint better. So I believe that they came up with this style because they were often presenting in PowerPoint. That's just my hunch.
Okay.
I think it's the same. It's basically a sequence, right? Sequence of stages and steps, just arranged differently. Has anybody else done anything different? I'm curious because a lot of people said job maps. They probably borrowed mine and mimicked mine, but I'm just wondering if anybody did anything completely different. Nope. All right.
So we still have a couple of questions left, Jim. I don't know if you want to try and go through those really quickly, if people can stay on. If you do have to drop off, I'm going to drop a link for a feedback form. It's just a couple of really quick questions. If you have a moment to give us your thoughts on this, we would love to continue improving. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm going to go over to Jennifer's question. Would you say the job relates to the how in the problem? when approaching UX problem, I've always looked at it as through the why, the who, the how. Just starting to look at jobs to be done. Yeah, I think there's a why, who, how, and a what as well too in jobs to be done. And I have this model. Some of you have seen that model where I do have some overlapping circles where you look at the job performer. So you need to understand that's the who, and then you have a main job, that's the what. But you also have the process, which is the how. And the process is represented by a job map, right? But then you also have this thing over here called I call it outcomes. That from doing that job, what are the outcomes that you want? And you can think of outcomes like measures of success, right? So what are the measures of success that are going to tell me this is kind of in my view, this is very functional over here on the left. But how do I know I did it well? That's what the outcomes let me know. And then finally over here too are the circumstances. So for me, the circumstances are factors that frame all of this. So all of this gets framed by these circumstances. And this is time, manner, and place. So this is, getting energy in the morning versus just getting energy. This is listening to music versus listening to music on the go, or listening to music on a jog, or listening to music in the rain. These circumstances you can use to qualify the main job. But even if you don't qualify the main job with the circumstance, they still frame how the job performer gets the main job does and which outcomes are going to be the most important for them. So these 5 elements, the who, the what, the how, and then the when and the where with the circumstances. And I like to say the outcomes have a little bit of the why in there, what the measures of success.
So, hey, Jim, can you hear me?
Jennifer. Yes, I can. Hi, Jennifer.
I'll be really quick because I know you have other questions to answer too. So I was looking at the why also as the why within the data, the who as the personas, and the how as jobs to be done as the process.
I see. Right.
You think that's valid too?
I think that's okay. I think that's okay. Yeah, I do. And in fact, my view of jobs to be done is also influenced by I can't think of his name right now. Not Theodore Levitt, the other old white guy who's dead now. Drucker, Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker has a chapter in one of his books. I have the book floating around here, and he talks about process need. Right, so he talks about process need, and actually some of the elements that I picked out come from his process need. And that's actually the chapter. That's actually the place that the word "jobs to be done," the phrase "job to be done," is actually first written, or that we can at least identify jobs to be done. And he says the process need begins with the job to be done. The point is he looks at the job as a process that people are trying to get something done, and it's not just a goal, it's a goal that unfolds, and you have to understand that process. And that's why I think the job map is probably the first best thing that you can do, because it's not just having a job, a check, it's what's the process of doing that job. So I very much think that process and job are very similar. In fact, when you're formulating that main job, you have to formulate it in a way that has a beginning, middle, and end, and that has a done state. There has to be a done, otherwise it's not a job to be done. So the way that you formulate the job is totally influenced by the process.
I like it. It's a nest within a nest.
There you go. It's a Russian doll thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I showed with this hierarchy too, there's a ton of Russian doll problems when you work with jobs to be done. And there's no right or wrong answer. Again, that's why we just created that new module. It's called Scoping Your Jobs to be Done Strategy, because it's super strategic. To answer the question, where are you going to innovate? That's a strategic question. That a company could say, we want to completely reinvent ourselves. That's the parking map that Mike Boyson had. That other job map is, how do we get out of this business that we're in, versus we want to, improve the way that people drill a hole in the wall. Those are strategic questions. So scoping this is also scoping your strategy as well, too. There you go. You know what, Elaine? We are 4 minutes over, and we did want to make these compact, and we appreciate everybody's attention. Nice to see everybody again, the folks who have been here in the past, and I appreciate all the questions and all the thoughts here. So let's keep them coming, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Jose, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get to your questions, but we will start with that next time in
there you go.
Early January when we're back. All right. Thank you so much.
It's a deal. All right. Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Have a great holiday break, too. We'll be back in January.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.